Hey everyone, what's up? Welcome back to part 6 of our design system series. If you haven't watched my part 1 to part 5 videos, then I will highly recommend you to go and check it out. I will link them in the description and you can also find them in the playlist. In today's video, however, we are going to talk about responsive layout grids. What exactly is responsive design? How do you use grid and column systems to create responsive designs? And how can you add the responsive designs to your design system in Figma? So without further ado, let's get started. So what exactly is a responsive layout? A responsive layout is a system for UI design that adapts to different screen sizes and orientation, ensuring consistency across your layouts, which typically boils down to how can you make sure that your design looks great on all screen sizes that are available on this planet Earth. We have different resolution, different screen sizes for phone, we have different tablets, we have desktop, different size of desktop, large desktop, extra large desktops, wide desktops, right? So you have so many screen sizes available to you. How can you make sure that your design looks consistent and perfect on all of these screen sizes? So this system, this responsive layout system helps you to design for a few screen, and based on some rules, it'll help you to scale your design to different screen sizes so that this looks good on all the devices. So that's what exactly is this responsive layout system is. Now I've made a small illustration to explain this as well. So for example, let's say you have a desktop. Now you have a desktop and you have some certain design elements which are numbered as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? Now if you see when I go from desktop to tablet, my screen size is getting smaller. Now if you see the elements are rearranging themselves. When I go from tablet to a mobile screen which is even smaller, there is a further rearrangement of the design elements happening. So the elements remains the same, but they rearrange and scale in a way that they fit to all screen sizes available. Okay, so this rearranging and scaling, the rules on when to rearrange, when to scale is defined by this responsive layout system. And that's what we are going to learn today. But before we get into the nitty gritty of this system, let's first see a real life example of how responsive layouts work. So I'm going to show you an example live of Pinterest actually and explain you how this looks like. And then we'll dig deep into Figma and understand how can we add this into our design system. So this is the website of Pinterest, and if I try to resize it, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to resize the browser window, and you will see the different elements that it contains. Right now, at this particular desktop size, I have a MacBook Pro with me. We can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different column grids in this particular design. Okay, so let me just quickly resize this. So I've resized this. Okay, now if I go even smaller, let's say like this. Now if you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the system has automatically scaled itself to only a 5 grid system, 5 column system. If I resize it even further, okay, now you have 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So if I go even smaller, you will see now we have 3. So as I change the window of the browser, as I mimic how a different screen size will look like, the elements are automatically scaling so that they look good in all the screen sizes. So this is basically what is known as a responsive layout or a responsive design, where the elements in your design is adapting to the different screen sizes that you have. Okay, so this is what exactly looks like what is known as a responsive design. So now let's hop back into our presentation again, and I'll explain you the details of how can we design this responsive layout. So a responsive design system consists of 3 critical elements. One is known as columns, then the second one is gutters, and the third one is margins. The column is basically these pink columns that you see. The gutter is basically space between 2 columns, which is represented by this blue line. And then you have margins, which is represented by this green line on the edge of the device. Okay. So columns is where basically you place the content or the design elements. Okay. So column area is where you place all of your design elements. And in a responsive layout, we never define column by fixed values. We never say, okay, it's 25 pixel or 30 pixel. We always define it in percentages. So basically this helps us to adapt to any screen size. Okay, I'll explain this in going further, but bear with me, okay, on this. And this is another example. So for a mobile screen with 360 dp width, you have 4 column layout. Okay, so you have these 4 columns and the width of this device is 360 dp. By the way, if you're not sure what exactly is dp and why density independent pixels is used in app design, I have explained that in great details in one of my older videos. I will link that in the description. You can go and check it out. Okay. The next thing is gutters. So the gutter is space between the two columns, and it helps us to separate content. So if you are placing two content, this will help us to create a separation between them. Okay. So for example, on a mobile device, 360 dp width device, you have 16 dp gutters, and gutter space is typically fixed. Column spaces are flexible, defined in margins, defined in percentage, sorry, whereas gutter space is typically fixed. It will be fixed to some value, 16 dp, 24 dp, so that it doesn't look odd. It doesn't get too big when you scale the device. Okay. The third is margins. So margins is space between content and the left and right edge of the screen. So it's only from the left and right edge of the screen. Margins are typically defined so that your content or whatever design that you make on a physical device does not get missed out if there is a curved screen. So for example, a lot of devices comes with curved edges on the end. So a margin is given as a protective area so that even if the edges of the screens are curved, your content is viewable. So it's typically defined from left and right edge. And margin widths are defined using fixed or scaling values. So it can be both fixed as well as scaling values depending on the type of breakpoint we have. So I'll explain what breakpoint is, but margins are also flexible. It can have a fixed value as well as can have a scaling value. Okay. And this is what your margins look like. For a mobile device, Android recommends, or Google Material Design recommends 16 dp as fixed margins from both the edges. Okay. And what exactly is a breakpoint? So I explained breakpoint. So breakpoint is basically a threshold determined by the specific layout requirements. What it means is till what screen size will you call something as a mobile? So let's say if I have a screen size of 300 dp, I keep on increasing it till what size will you call something as a mobile? So typically 300 to 600 is the range where you define something as a mobile. If the screen size is in that range, is in that breakpoint, you call it as a mobile. Now above 600 till 960 we call it as a tablet. So that is a tablet regime. Okay, so that breakpoint refers to a tablet. And if you go beyond 960, then you enter into desktop regime. And if you go beyond 1440, then you go into extra large desktop regimes. So these specific values that are defined by industry standards are known as breakpoints. And at these breakpoints, your rules, your layout changes, right? The way I showed you in my one of the illustrations, right? Here. So if you see, when you hit a certain breakpoint, when your screen size changes to, let's say, from desktop to tablet, at that particular time your layout changes. When it again changes from tablet to mobile, then again your layout changes and the rule changes. So the rule defines whether you have to resize things or whether you have to rearrange things. Okay, so that's how breakpoints work. Now let's hop back into Figma and I'll quickly show you how things work. So we're in Figma right now, and before we start anything, here is a cheat sheet by Material Design. This is what they recommend for designing responsive designs. Okay, so here if you see, we have different parameters. We have screen size, we have margin, we have body, we have layout columns. Okay, so screen size basically extra small to small. 0 to 599 dp is where we call something as a phone, and in that case you have a 16 dp margin. Body scaling, so as I explained, so body is typically the area where you apply columns. Okay, so it's the effective area actually, and it could differ from the actual size of the screen. I'll explain you what it means later with an example, but for now, body is an effective area where you apply the exact columns. Okay, so you have margin 16 dp, you have body scaling. Scaling means that it should stretch or scale down depending on the size of the screen. Okay, so it's a running element. It's not a fixed value. As we explained, columns are typically not fixed values. They are in percentages and they can scale and scale down depending on the size of the screen. And for screen size of phone, Google recommends a 4-column layout. Okay, so again, the next thing is tablet. And from tablet, you have two ranges. You have 600 to 904. These are small tablets. For that, Google recommends a 32 dp margins from the edges. Then again, body type is scaling, and and it's recommended to have 8-column layout for your the device size. From 905 to 1239, this is basically large tablets where it starts to enter into the desktop territory, and in that case, margin is scaling. So they recommend that margin on the edges of the screen should be flexible. It should not have a fixed value, whereas the body is 840 dp, which means that your content will never go beyond this size. So the actual device size is quite bigger. If you see, it's bigger, 1239, it's quite bigger than 840. But what they are recommending is the body should not go beyond 840. Your element should reside into this element, and the rest of the space that is left empty on the left and right will be taken up by the margins. Okay, and the column layout that they recommend is 12 column layouts. For laptops, again, you have different ranges. You have 1240 to 1439 is the typical range of laptops, desktop sizes. For that, they recommend 200 dp margin. The body size is again scaling, it's a running element. And then 12 column layout is what they recommend. For desktop large, which is 1440 and above, extra large desktop, widescreen desktop, if you see again, the margin is scaling, which means on the left and the right, the margins are flexible, and the body can only scale up to 1040. Beyond this, rest of the additional extra space will be taken up by the margin, because the margin is a scaling element, is a free element. And again, the column layout that they recommend is 12. I'll explain these two odd scenarios with an example how this is done, but for now, this is the recommendation. We'll jump into first desktop design and understand why and what Google recommends. So if you see, for desktop, you have 12 column layout. Now, let me first quickly show you how to enable this in your Figma file, and then we'll discuss why 12 column layouts. Okay. A on my keyboard, which is basically to invoke the presets for artboards, and I'll select desktop, and I'm choosing MacBook 14 for now. And this lies within our range, so I'll just choose it like this. Okay, now we have the desktop screen here with us, and to enable a layout grid, you can go here on the right. If you see here, it says layout grid. Okay, and you just have to click plus. And if I click plus, it automatically fills some value. We can change it. You click here on these dots, and here you see a bunch of options. You have grid, column, and rows. You have to select columns. So if you see, we have layout columns, and we have to select 12 column layout for our desktop. So we'll go here, and if you see, here's the layout column count. So what I'll do is I'll change it from 5 to 12. So as soon as I do 12, we have 12 columns available to us. Choose any color you want, and you can give any opacity. It does not hinder. Then you have type. So for scaling or for running where you don't have any specific parameters, you can set it to stretch. This is what we want. We have a scaling type body. Okay. So scaling means it should stretch and it should scale down depending on the size of the screen. And width is set to auto, because again, we don't want to give any column width. We do, however, have to give a margin, which is 200 dp. So we'll give 200 dp here. Okay. And then gutter space is not mentioned here, but I'll explain you what gutter space we need. We need a 24 gutter space. So everything has to be a multiple of 4. For desktop, 24 is the right size to go with. Okay, so 200 margin, 24 gutter. If we add these two parameters, rest of the all available space will be used by the columns, column width. So column width we are not defining, it's set to auto. And if I show you quickly how and when we resize things, how it look like. So if this is our desktop, and if I just increase this, you see the columns are expanding, whereas the gutter and the margins remain the same because we have fixed it, and the columns are the one that is stretching, that are scaling depending on the screen size of the device. So this is what scaling means. Beyond this gutter and the margins, every other available space will be taken up by the columns. Okay, so this is how 12 column layout looks like, and this is how you enable 12 columns. Now, how does it help actually, right? When you design something, how does it help? So once you, let's say, design some sort of elements, if you see this, it automatically snatches to these layouts. So when you design something, you can easily attach, and if you see, it automatically snatches to these levels, and you don't have to worry about anything else. So whatever you design will automatically be consistent. The space between them will always be consistent. Okay, so that's how they help. Now, if you see, this helps in scaling things vertically, whereas you need to, for example, now you want to stack something vertically up and down, for example, like this, right? There are no columns and there are no rows which you can help, right? So for that also we can define some sort of row so that even our vertical spacing can be done properly. Our horizontal spacing is done very well with these 12 column layouts, but our vertical spacing is not very clear because they are now free. So what we can do is when we apply a layout, we can also add columns, rows to it. So I'll just come here. We have applied column automatically. We'll again hit plus, and you can apply multiple layouts on top of each other. And here what we want to do is we want to select rows. Okay, so I'll come here and I'll select rows. So it'll give you this horizontal rows, and you can give a very high count, something like 1000, so that it just scales to the entire screen. Okay, and 10% type stretch, we can give it to top. So we want it to start from the top. We don't want it to start from left or right. We just want these vertical rows to start from the top. Okay, and you can give height as 8 because everything has to follow a multiple of 8 in that case. Okay, I'll explain you why 8. I explained 8-point grid system in my previous videos. I will explain that as well again, but 8 is what we choose. We don't need any offsets. Gutter space, let's do something like 16, again a multiple of 8. Okay, so now whatever you will design, you know that okay, beyond this I cannot go, or whatever you design next, it'll always follow some sort of a layout. So now your vertical space is also consistent, your horizontal space is also consistent. Okay, so that's how you set up the entire layout grid for a desktop. Now you must be wondering why this 12 column layout was chosen. Okay, so why this 12 column layout is so popular. So the reason this 12 column layout is popular because it's rather peculiar as well as quite phenomenal. So if you see, you can divide this 12 column into multiple segments. You can divide this into by its own. So the entire thing can be divided by 1. It can be divided into 2 parts, equal 2 parts. So you can have 6 and 6. So 1 half of each. You can also divide the entire 12 column into 8 and 4 columns. So an element can take up 8 width, and the secondary element that is adjacent to it can take the 4 column width. Okay, you can also divide into 3 equal parts, which will be 4 column, 4 column, 4 column each. You can divide this 12 column into 4 equal parts, 1 2 3 4. Okay, you can divide this into 6 equal parts, 1 2 3 4 5 6. Okay, and then again 12 equal parts. So if you see, you can divide this 12 column into different segments, and those are all even number segments. Okay, you can divide in 1, you can divide in 2 3 8 and 4. All of this you can do with this 12 column. This is not possible with any other column system. It's not possible with 13 column, 14, 15. So that's why 12 column system is widely used for desktop design. Okay, so because we can divide it in so many ways. Now you understood you can divide it into so many ways, and what is the implication for this? So if I show you one simple design, this is a landing page design. In this landing page design, the entire thing is covered by a 12 column layout. So now the 12 column layout is there, and all of these elements are spanning from one column to another column. So this is this first scenario, which is the entire element is taking the first space. Now if I go here, you see this is an 8 and 4 column layout. So till here is what your left element is, which basically contains this text, and your right illustration is only taking up the last 4 columns, 1 2 3 4. So this is 8 by 4 column layout. Okay, and you can create a lot of other layouts. You can also create grid system. If you see Pinterest, they use this 1 by 6, 1 by 4, 1 by 3 because they have vertical elements. Okay, so that's why 12 column layout is used, and it's very powerful in design system. So I hope you understood the funda of 12 column system and how can you apply that in your design. So on top of 12 column system, I've also explained you how to add horizontal rows so that your designs are also vertically consistent. Okay, so I hope you understood the desktop funda. Let's move into tablet, and then we'll move into phone. Okay, so now let's make the responsive layout for our tablet. So we'll first do it for this 600 to 904 range, which is the small tablet, and then we'll go to the larger tablet. Okay, so for the small tablet, they recommend a margin of 32 dp, body scaling, and layout column 8. So I'll hit A on my keyboard, and that will invoke my panel here, and I'll choose iPad mini 8.3, which is 744 width. So this is under our range of the first range, 600 to 904. I'll do that here, and we have the tablet. Okay, the tablet is with us. Now what we need to do is we need to align, I need to create layout grid. Again, here's the layout grid available to you. Just hit the plus icon, and now we need an 8 column layout. So we'll first choose columns, change it to 8. Okay, now, And the next thing is 32 dp margins. So we'll give margin as 32 dp. Okay. And if you see gutter space is there, we'll choose a variant of 8. So multiple of 8, which is basically 16. So now this is the thing. And again, the type is set to stretch. Okay. So that if you go from this range 600 to 904, your design should stretch. So if you see, the column is stretching, right? So this is what it means to stretch. And this is the segmentation. This is the setting for your 600 to 900 small tablet. Now let's do this larger tablet because this has a different anomaly. It has margin as scaling and body as 840 dp. So now what that means, I'll explain you. Okay. So first of all, what we need to do is, I'll just push it down. We need another artboard. So I'll click A on my keyboard and select a large tablet. So I'm going to pick iPad Pro 12.9 because the size is 1024 width, and that is basically this larger dimension falling into this dimension. Okay. So I'll select iPad Pro, and here is our iPad Pro. Okay. So now if you see for this iPad Pro, the settings are different. Your margins is scaling or basically free running, and then your body is 840 dp and layout column is 12. Okay. So what they're saying is, for a very large tablet, which is almost going into the territory of your desktop, or maybe this mini with a landscape orientation, the width will enter the large large tablet territory, which is almost in the area of desktop. So what they're recommending is that you should have a 12 column layout. So I'll explain it here. I'll select this layout grid and I'll choose columns and I'll select 12. First of all, they need 12 column layout. Now they're saying don't give any margins. The margin should be free. What they're saying is body, the effective body where the column should place should be 840. Okay. So if you see, there is no place for body to put, there's no setting here as body in Figma. So what you have to do first is select center so that your body is always in the center. Okay. And then to define the column width, what we need to do is we'll select 840 as mentioned by the material design guidelines and divide by 12 because 12 column guide is what they recommend, and that will give us 70 width. So they want us to have a 70 column width here. Okay. And I'll change the gutter space to again 16, which is a divisible multiple of 8, and this is the setting that they want. Now what this means is, no matter what happens, your columns will never gonna expand beyond 840. So right now these 12 columns are spanning to 840. Let me show you. If I just try to expand this screen, you see the columns and the gutters are not changing because we have given a fixed value, whereas the margins are now flexible and free. So all the additional space can be taken up by the margins, and your content will always remain in the center. So especially like when you see Instagram and Facebook, they are designed in this way so that even if you view them on a very large screen, you will not see anything on the right and left. They just have one simple vertical feed, and that feed just only takes up 840. You don't go beyond that. So websites that have a sort of like a feed system uses this sort of a setting where you have center, you have a fixed width column, a gutter, but your margins are free. All the additional space is taken up by margin and that remains free. Okay. So this is what they mean by this setting. Okay. Similarly, this is for even larger desktops, 1440 and above. You don't want your content scale beyond 1040. 1040 is a very average size of a desktop. Beyond this, they want everything to be taken up by the margins. Same principle. So let me quickly show you actually as well. Let me show you Facebook. Okay, so we are in Facebook right now. And if I simulate a very extra large desktop here, if you see, I'm simulating a very extra large desktop. On left and right, you see the margins are taking up the space. The content still remains in the center and to a specific dimension, which is 1040. Okay, so beyond this level, the content is not scaling. Everything else, if I go to a very large desktop as well, we'll see left and right margins taking up all the space. So this is what they mean, because in a feed system, it doesn't make sense that your feed is too stretchy in horizontal direction. So this setting is provided where you have margins as scaling, whereas the body content remains to a very specific dimension. Okay, this is the example of this. Whereas if you see Pinterest is totally opposite. Pinterest takes all the available space that is given to it. So if I go to even a larger desktop than this, you see more grids are now added. So Pinterest uses a different philosophy where it uses a stretchy grid and all the available space is taken up by the columns, whereas Facebook, on the other hand, uses a fixed grid, a fixed column grid, where the additional space, available space, is taken up by the margins. So these are two different philosophies of design. Okay. And now we'll define same thing for phones. So for the phones, they want a 4 column layout, pretty straightforward scaling and 16 dp margin. So what I'll do is I'll go here and I'll hit A on my keyboard and I'll pick up a phone. Let's pick Android large. Okay, so our phone is here, and here what they want is a 4 column grid. Because it's a very small phone, 12 column grid will not make sense because the grids will be very, very small. Okay, so what you need is you need a 4 column grid. So we'll do columns, we'll do 4. Okay, the margins that they want is 16, and the gutter space is up to us. We can use a multiple of 8. Okay, so I'll use 8. You can also use 16 if you want. If you think this space is not there, I mean space is not visible to you, then you can use 16. So 16 margin is what they recommend, and gutter is up to you. So always use a multiple of 8 to define a gutter. I think 16 gutter looks really nice. And yeah, that's it. Stretchy 16 gutter, and that's it for your design for your Android or maybe iOS phones. Okay, so 4 column layout grids are used for your designs. Now we know how to apply all these layouts to our frames. Now how do you add these to our design system? That's the next question. So if you see, this one was our desktop design system, and it has rows and as well as columns. So if I select this, if you see, you have rows as well as columns. So how do you basically add this into your design system and your style guide? So to do that, it's very simple. As we did for all the other elements previously, click on these 4 dot icon which says style, click on this plus which says create style, and then you can call it anything. Standard naming would be website slash, if this is large or medium, you can call it medium. Just use the same nomenclature that you use company wide, and I'm going to call it website medium. Okay, and similarly for your tablets, you can call it same. Go to this 4 dots, create style, and again you're going to call it website slash tablet. Okay, and that's it. Now anyone coming to your site will know that website has tablet and medium, all of these different sizes. You can add all of these together. Same thing for your apps, for your mobiles, and that's it. That's how you add them to your design system. Okay, so I'm just gonna call it website slash mobile. Okay, so now if you see, if I come here, I'll have all the presets, and everyone will have all the presets available to them. So here is a quick summary of what we understood so far. So the pink lines that you see are basically the breakpoints. Okay, and I have mentioned the different devices here and different sizes. Okay, so for example, if you see small phones till large phones, 599 dp is the size till you have the larger phones. So by the way, if you don't understand the difference between a dp and a pixel, I've explained that in one of my old videos. I'll link it above, so you can go and check it out. So everything is actually measured in dp or sp. Okay, so dp is basically density independent pixels. Now between this size from 0 dp to 599 dp, theoretically what you're trying to do is you're just trying to scale the design. So whatever design you have between these ranges here, since you're technically in that phone range, you're scaling the system. So you're scaling the design. So you just scale things up. Now let me just quickly show you what I mean by scaling things up. So if I just show you here, this is basically a plugin that I used. So if you see here, when I move it into the mobile territory, I'm still into mobile territory. Everything is just expanding and scaling proportionally. Nothing is changing, no rearrangement is happening. I'm just scaling things up. So that's what basically is happening. Whereas when you hit the breakpoint, when basically you're moving from one type of device to another type of device. So for example, from large phones, now you're moving into tablets. So at this particular stage, you do scaling and rearrangement. So what exactly is happening, if I show you again from in this example, as soon as I hit the tablet territory, right now if you see, I was just scaling things up. And as soon as I hit tablet territory, there's a rearrangement happening. Scaling is also happening, things have gone smaller, but it's also rearranging itself. Now you see 4 elements in one view. Okay, so that's basically what happens when you hit the breakpoint area, and this is the breakpoint area. Again, from this to this, where from 600 dp to 1239 dp, you're still in the technically in the tablet regime. And what you do is you again scale things up. You just scale things up between this and this sizes. And once you hit again the breakpoint area where you're now moving into tablets, from tablets to laptop territory, you scale and rearrange things. Okay, so again rearranging will happen at this breakpoint, and you will enter into a you will enter into a laptop regime. So if I show you again here example, you are into tablet, and as soon as you hit the tablet and go into a desktop territory, you'll see you are now also have additional components appearing and additional design changes happening. So this is how things work. And if you move beyond that, let's say 1240 to 1440 is the monitor, typically larger monitor size. Again, at extra large desktop, you again move things up and rearrange and scale things. So this is a very quick summary of how things work in responsive system. So your design will look a certain way here, and there's a scale. From here to here, it'll look certain way, and it'll just scale. From here to here, it'll just scale, and from here to here, again, something else. So if you typically see here, what is happening is you ideally have to design 1, 2, 3. Typically, 3 different UIs you have to design so that it works for all your screen sizes. Because from here to here, you don't have to design a new UI. Developers will automatically scale your UI, and it will not break out. Okay, so you don't have to divide design screen for every small pixel. You can divide, you can design it for different regimes. So you can design for mobile, tablet, desktop, and if you want to give like more perfection to your designs, you can also design it for extra large desktops. So typically 3 to 4 designs is what you need to create a responsive system. Okay, I hope I was clear with this system, with this breakpoint, with this small chart like overflow. So that's it for today's video. I hope you watch my rest of the videos, and if you like this video, do give it a thumbs up, share with your friends, and subscribe. And I'll see you in my next video. Take care. Bye bye.